Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special edition of the Mavs Outsiders podcast. This is separate from our weekly episode. As you can tell by the title, we have a guest. But first, I'm joined as always by my brother, Mr. Michael Bibbins. I'm Maurice Williams, aka Reese, MFR25 on Twitter. X if you're nasty. Bibbs at Bibbs Corner on Twitter, BibbsCorner.com for all of your Bibbs Corner content, including the Have You Seen podcast for the movie fans. And today, for a special NBA Cup edition, we are joined by a returning guest. And if I'm not mistaken, the only non-Mavs related returning guest on the podcast, Mr. ThreeCone. Welcome back. Say what's up to the people.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, I appreciate y'all having a Thunder fan on here. I know not a lot of Mavs fans are very fond of us, so I appreciate it. But now, man, hype to hop back on. I know we got the NBA Cup game coming up. I'm not prepared for what PJ Washington is going to do to my favorite team again, but it'll be a fun one. I'm excited about it. I know the Cup is kind of one of those things people either care or they don't. I think it's fun, and it'll be cool because it's like a non-regular season matchup. Of course, we played in the playoffs. I'm of the belief that these are the two best teams in the Western Conference. So it'll be a nice kind of sample for what I think eventually will be a playoff series between these two teams in the Western Conference Finals. So
I have to say, when you came on the podcast and we did the preview for the playoff series
mm,
last season, I had no idea that after that playoff series was done, that Thunder fans and Mavs fans will have so much internet beef. Like
man,
it everything was fine going into that series, and
mm,
afterwards, it's just like constant bickering, even while we were in the Western Conference Finals. Like,
that's the way it goes, bro. Like once you got a couple teams that are really good, and you've got a lot of physicality in it, and it's really back and forth. And I mean, the point differential between the two teams was literally zero, if I remember correctly. It was one of those things where it's like, I mean, it was an incredible series. Like if I was a
mm-hmm.
neutral fan, I would have been enjoying it. Of course, I was stressed out of my mind, but it was a great time, man. I had a lot of fun watching the series, and it just kind of feels like the way it goes with NBA Twitter and stuff. And it's like the second two teams playing a playoff series, all of a sudden they're mortal enemies. People can't just be like, oh, that was an awesome series. Congratulations to y'all and move on from it. It's like we still need to talk about it. Like there are still people in my timeline right now that will be talking about it every few days. I'm like, y'all, it is so long ago. Like move on. The two teams have changed a little bit now. I think they're destined for a rematch in some round of the playoffs, depending on
Mm-hmm.
seeding coming up. So like let's talk about it then. Let's stop talking about a series that already ended. And then the Mavericks went on to win the final or make it to the finals, being the Timberwolves and everything. Like you said, it's just people like to hold on to stuff. So
It's very poetic that we meet up here in the first round of the
yeah,
NBA Cup. I
yeah.
do
It's
want to warn you.
all the Thunder's ops are kind of here. It's the Mavericks, it's the Rockets. Thunder Rockets fans hate each other. Thunder Warriors fans hate each other. Like if the Wolves were really good again, they also have beef with the Thunder last year. But yeah, man, it just seems like every fan base that has beef with the Thunder fan base and vice versa, it seems like that's everybody over on the West side. And then in the East, you've now got like the Paolo and Franzless Magic. You've got the Hawks going up against the Knicks. It's like, man, why does the West have to be set up like this, bro? I need somehow for Oklahoma City to be East enough that when they expand, we're talking about the Thunder out East, because I can't stand the fact that you've got like the Nets right now as like the 7th seed, bro. It's ridiculous.
That would actually make things more interesting, to be quite honest. Texas is
My vote is Minnesota goes to the East because there's no Western teams near them at all.
I agree with you, but my personal bias says I disagree with geography and that the Thunder should go anyways. Because I already know Cooper Flag is going to get drafted to like the Blazers or something, and Wemby's here in the West now, and I know y'all are there, and we're on the rise. It just feels like it's just nonstop, and Houston's kind of figuring out. Like, can we get like some Western Conference talent to move to the East? Like, can the Nuggets implode and all of a sudden we have Jokic out East or anything like that? Just take some of these players out of the West and put them in the East. Like with all the injuries, especially the Eastern Conference reserves in the All-Star game, it's going to be a joke compared to what you see out West. So yeah, man.
it's funny. Me and Biz were just doing a podcast. We have an NBA pod we do for Patreon,
Mm-hmm.
and we were doing a standings check-in. And I said once we got to the West, I'm like, it's been weeks since we checked the standings, and I'm almost certain it didn't look anything like this. Like the Clippers are the 6th seed, the Mavs are now the 2 seed, the Rockets are the 4 seed. Like the God bless the New Orleans Pelicans.
Oh my God, bro. I can't. And that's another thing. Like today, there was the whole thing where Ingram laying on Dort's foot and there was that ankle injury. And now, thankfully, I was away from Twitter for most of today, but I log on and everyone's like calling, Lou Dort the dirtiest player alive. And I'm like, he kind of got hit in the face. Like, I don't know. It's just this
Guantanamo Bay. Send him to Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, that was about half the tweets I was seeing on the timeline. It's like, y'all, come on. Like, we can't keep doing stuff like this. It's just, I feel so bad for New Orleans. Like, Zion is apparently nowhere close to returning, and now Ingram's hurt, and everybody's been injured for that team. But the thing is, like, they're 5-19. I mean, if they were in the Eastern Conference, they'd get a few guys back. You win 4 games in a row, and all of a sudden you're like the 6th seed. So it's just ridiculous. I mean,
like the
Sixers are the 12 seed right now, and they're 7-15. They're 2 games out of a top 8 spot. Who is Brooklyn, by the way? So
that's what we were just talking about too. Like we were talking about, the 76ers have been so trash all year. And I was like, they won 2 games in a row. Let's see where they're like a game and a half from being all right.
Like look at the Bucks and Hawks. A win streak in a couple games in a row, or a couple games, maybe 6 out of 7, and now you're a playoff team.
Yeah, and then in the Western Conference, it's like you lose a game and you drop 5 spots. Like
that's why I was telling people, I'm like, I'm so glad with a 2 seed, but it's like if we for a second lose 3 games in a row, what can happen? Yeah. We could be a play-in team.
And I did see people, and this is a good question for you as well, saying that they kind of wish we weren't in the NBA Cup because we got to play against really good teams. Like the additional games on our schedule are against really good teams, and that could hurt us long run in the standings. Like if we lose these games, do you have any thoughts or feelings about that as far as potentially messing up your standings long term?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because I mean, if the Thunder lose to y'all in that first Cup game, then suddenly you're 1.5 games back of the 1 seed, which again speaks to like the Thunder and Mavericks are like 18-5, 16-8, and just barely ahead of other teams in the pack. But yeah, it definitely is interesting to me that it kind of does set up those teams to have to deal with really strong opponents over those games. I guess the good thing is like you lose that one and then all of a sudden you're out and you really don't have to keep going through it over and over again. But I think in the long run, like even though it might hurt you by a game or 2, like it at the same time, I think it's good to get these reps. Like I'm excited that the Thunder, even though, Chet isn't playing, which really sucks. But it's going to be nice to see how this team looks in that more playoff atmosphere setting against one of the best teams in the NBA with the Mavericks. And you can see how Isaiah Hartenstein works and how he affects that matchup. But I still feel like it gets you some good experience against those top teams because I am excited to see how iHeart plays in that matchup against like Lively and Gafford. And, can any of the guys, like maybe we put Cruz on top of Lou Dort to just stand out there with PJ Washington on the perimeter or something like that. Because we have to come up with some strategy since he absolutely hates Oklahoma City for some reason. But I think in the long run, I appreciate more the reps you get against the best opponents in the league to kind of build up towards the playoffs, especially as a young team, as opposed to like, maybe you grab one extra loss against a really good squad, which it's not really the end of the world. So
I do want to warn you, PJ Washington's last game last night, he did not shoot well.
Yep, that sounds about right.
Yeah, which means come Tuesday, who knows what you'll get out of PJ Washington.
Yeah, man. I think it was that game last time when he cooked us. It was the game prior he had 0 points and then he had 27 and 17 and the next game he had 4 points and I was like, can this please not happen again? And I hit like a big play on underdog through that because, and like one of my picks was, it was PJ Washington, I think 1.5 threes. I was like, this is the easiest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And he had 2 threes in the first like 80 seconds. I was like, yeah, obviously. Like, I can't believe they gave me that type of number. They should have had the number at like 4.5 if they really wanted to be smart with it. So yeah, man, he's just, I talk a lot and a lot of Thunder fans talk about Thunder killers. It was like Andrew Wiggins back in the day. He always seemed to torch us for some reason. LaMarcus Aldridge would always go berserk against the Thunder. I think his career had like a 60 piece against us one night. PJ Washington has absolutely vaulted himself into the Hall of Fame in those types of players. Honestly, out of everything, if we eventually face off in the playoffs again, he is probably like the scariest player to me. Not Luka, who's the top 5 player, not Kyrie, who's playing out of his mind. It is PJ Washington out of all people, because he's just, I can't tell you the PTSD I have. Not to mention you all have Klay Thompson, of course, too, which gives me flashbacks at the same time. Yeah.
I don't think you have to worry about those flashbacks with Klay Thompson.
Thankfully, not as much, but I think PJ last game kind of even absorbed some of that Klay Thompson Thunder Killer power to really drive it home to us. He just turns into a completely different player when he plays against us. He's always good, but he's like top 5 in the world against Oklahoma City. If y'all could like convince him that every team is the Thunder, I legit think you guys might go like 82-0.
It's like we kind of have that in Dallas, and I'm pretty sure Biz can attest to this. It's like the versus Mavs All-Stars, like just random role players who for some reason always kill us. And at one point, especially with the Phoenix Suns, it was Kelly Oubre. Like Kelly Oubre on the Phoenix Suns against the Mavericks, you would have thought this dude was an all NBA player. It was absolutely ridiculous. So I understand the PJ Washington pain, but I'm glad we're on the opposite side of it right now.
Yeah. I mean, apparently if Thunder need to trade for Kelly Oubre is what I'm hearing. That's the secret weapon. That's the deadline move. We pick up Kelly Oubre, and then
that's what people are saying.
I mean, that apparently we got to pick up some type of Mavericks killer to match the PJ Washington thing. Like,
hey, look,
if you want to slide me some more of those Maverick killer names that I can go ahead and send over to Sam Presti real quick.
Any more ideas out there?
So. No. It's the thing is, most of them always came against Phoenix. Like I think it was 2 seasons ago, Damian Lee gamed us when he was that last season?
I don't think it was last season. I'm pretty sure
it had to be the season before last. Beginning of the season, game winner, Damian Lee, Phoenix.
I think
Suns.
I remember that game, yeah.
Unfortunately, me too. So maybe you want to pick up Damian Lee if you know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Well, I think we need to bench Shea for Damian Lee is what I'm starting to hear, man. Yeah, I think this is the idea we have to go ahead and go with for sure.
Do you have a question, Biz? Before
so I can't remember digging into the Thunder fan. When it comes to Thunder fans, I feel like there's 2 categories that I kind of vacillate between. It's the new school young Thunder fans that like latched on to Shea and it's been on since then. But then there's the Thunder fans that were there for KD, James Harden, that squad that went to the finals years ago. Where do you fall as far as your Thunder fanhood, and do you notice, like, is there a difference to you between the timeline of when people became Thunder fans?
Yeah, I think there definitely is a difference. For me personally, I started watching hoops like right around when that Thunder team assembled, when I was like 10, 11 years old. I'm 24 now. So that was the team that kind of made me fall in love with the sport. And thankfully, I was always more of a Russ guy than a KD guy, because that way, when Kevin Durant left, it broke my heart and like destroyed my entire life for a few weeks. But it completely ruined 4th of July, by the way, for me. Like, that's a dead holiday. But yeah, no, thankfully I was always more of a Russ guy, and I don't know. It just really kind of like latched onto the Thunder because I'm originally from Virginia. So there's not really many teams that close. It's like the Wizards, but I'm from like the southeast corner of Virginia. Thank God I'm not a Wizards fan. Yeah, I see you shaking your head, man. Thank God I'm not a Wizards fan.
I was just telling Bibbs, I'm like, can Baltimore get a WNBA team or something? They just expect us to root for the Wizards. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that is a crime to make anybody root for the Washington Wizards. I will say, one of my best friends who is from the same place that I am, he was up visiting a friend in Washington, D.C. yesterday. And so he saw the Wizards beat Jokic on the 56-point game night. So that was a pretty cool game to go to. You get to see one of the rarest things in sports, a Washington Wizards win. So yeah, man, it's one of those things where I'm very glad when I started watching hoops, I was like, oh yeah, the Thunder, like I like this team. And I wasn't just like, the Wizards are kind of close to me. The other team would have been the Hornets, which also, thank God, I'm not a Hornets fan. And yeah, I mean, I just kind of stuck with the Thunder. I stuck through it with the rebuild, KD leaving and the whole Carmelo Anthony era, and then the Dame shot, and then the bubble stuff, which was a whole other thing. Like, it's been a big roller coaster. And it's so interesting to me how many like very important pieces of recent NBA history that the Thunder are tied to, whether it was the Shea for Paul George trade that made the Clippers into the team that they eventually became, the Dame shot, which of course propelled him to like this new stratosphere of recognition. And that's now one of the most iconic shots in NBA history. And that broke up the Thunder. Whether you talk about the KD Russ thing with Kevin Durant leaving and Russell Westbrook going on to average a triple double, win MVP, the Lou Dort, James Harden battle, like that whole thing in the bubble was, and Chris Paul's like reascension with the Thunder. It's just been so many different moments. I feel like I want to stop witnessing history, basically, is what I'm saying, unless it's the Thunder making history by winning their first NBA championship. I'd like to see that. And even like further, you go back with the young Thunder team making it and trading James Harden away, and then him rising to superstardom. Just a lot has happened in the time that I've been a Thunder fan. I do think I see a difference sometimes. Like some people are like the sky is falling, and I'm sure y'all see this too with Mavs fans. You lose one game, and it's like, oh my god, everything's falling apart. We suck. It's awful. When it's like the NBA, like you can lose any given night to any team. The Nuggets again just lost to the Wizards with Nikola Jokic dropping 56 points. It happens. And so I feel like people just, get a little bit too overboard sometimes. And maybe more, that's more so like newer Thunder fans because they haven't lived through the heartbreak and the trauma that I have, to the point where I'm more like calm and like battle tested. I'm like, guys, we're going to be fine. This team is really good. We're dealing with injuries, this and that. Shea will miss one shot. Like we lost the Nuggets and Shea went for a layup instead of a midi, and he got blocked by Peyton Watson, who just made an insane defensive play. And everybody's like, is Shea not really that clutch? Like, why didn't he take that midi? Why did he take the layup instead? Is his mid-range jumper gone? Like people were freaking out. And the next team hits like 12 mid-range jumpers. It's just, yeah, I think that's the main difference I notice sometimes. There is also like this sect of, and I wonder if y'all see this at all with like people who are like talk about like Dirk versus like Luka or anything like that, where there are some people who are like, anytime you talk about Shea being potentially eventually one day the best Thunder player of all time, because like if he leads the Thunder to a championship, he's going to take that mantle from Russell Westbrook as like the most venerated figure in Thunder history. And like every time I post something about Shea, like in any relation to Russ, like recently they had a lob, it was Shea and J-Dub. They had one against the Jazz that looked very similar to a Kevin Durant Russell Westbrook lob against the Kings way back in the day. And I was like, history repeats itself because the plays just looked really similar. I wasn't comparing the level of dunks or the players or anything. And half my comments were like, don't ever compare this to Russ and KD ever again. Like, I can't believe you would do this. Like, you're disrespecting that era and stuff like that. Don't disrespect Russell Westbrook like that, when that is my favorite player of all time. So it's just, people kind of doing their thing on NBA Twitter the way that they do.
Reese, you can jump in if you disagree. I honestly don't think we do that much in the Mavs fandom. I think most people have a level of respect for Dirk that there hasn't been much of that yet. Like I've seen people say Luka's gonna be the greatest Mav of all time, but like they will go out of their way to pay reverence to like Dirk laid the foundation. Like without Dirk, none of whatever Luka got going on would even be possible. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of like infighting when it comes to Dirk versus Luka, like historically, which is interesting actually.
I will say, as far as the sky is falling thing, we do experience a lot of that.
Yeah.
And Bibbs and I have been Mavs fans for a while, and there is nothing in the Luka era that has taken place that is worse than the 2006 finals that we had to live through, that is worse than losing to Golden State in 2007 that we had to live through. I had to watch Dante Jones on the Denver Nuggets shoot the lights out against the Dallas Mavericks in the playoffs the year the Nuggets went to the Western Conference Finals. Like, I had to live through O.J. Mayo, Samuel Dallenberg, Darren Collison, and Mark Cuban expecting Dirk to win a championship with that team. Like, the husk of Vince Carter. Like, it's a lot of things that Mavs fans have lived through. So the newer Mavs fans who feel like the sky is falling, they don't know they know about those things, but they didn't experience them. So Luka losing to the Clippers in Game 7 is like the worst thing ever. And I understand. But it could be worse, trust me.
For sure.
That's the reason I asked that question, is because I feel like as a sports fan, you're not really a fan unless you suffered in the trenches.
Oh yeah.
There's levels, you know what I'm saying? Like you gotta go through a lot. And that's like, I'll be honest. I was hating very hard on those KD, Russ, Harden, Thunder because I was like, y'all haven't really suffered enough to be winning championships right now.
Yeah.
Y'all to fail and like go through a lot for a long time. And I feel like y'all have done that now. Like y'all
Yeah.
suffered.
I could say personally, I've gone through a lot of trauma. I remember when Dame hit the game winner, I was in my college lounge. That was my first year of college. And I was watching my phone. I was a little bit more delayed than one of my friends. And I hear one of my friends go, "Oh my God." And I look up and there's like four people looking at me. And I look back down and the Dame shot goes up and it goes in. And I just walked out and sat outside for a little bit. It had been snowing that night. And my girlfriend's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, I need a minute. I was like, just let me be for a few minutes and I'll be back in. So yeah, I have absolutely been there at this point. Yeah, I agree. I think you don't really appreciate what happens eventually, winning a championship and all the success that hopefully every team gets to experience at some point. Obviously, a lot of teams experience it more than others, but it doesn't really hit the same unless you suffer like that. And that's why to me, it's always been crazy that people are able to like bandwagon like fan bases. Like, I don't know. I don't really obviously I want to see the Thunder win finals. It'll be one of the greatest days of my entire life. But like if I hadn't lived through all that stuff, like it'd be cool. But it's like, I mean, for reference, I'm also a Dallas Cowboys fan. That comes from my dad, so I know y'all can probably experience or relate to this, or at least somewhat. I think. Who are you both a fan of?
I'm a Ravens fan.
A Ravens fan?
I'm
Okay.
I'm a Saints fan. So
Okay, I
I've
think I knew
suffered
that you
a
were a
lot.
Saints fan. Yeah, you've suffered a lot. But I'll tell you, it's one of the best parts about. So I was born, and my dad. I'm also a Yankees fan. I have the Cowboys Yankees thing. I know I hate it as well. But that came from my dad. No one was really a basketball fan in my family until I came along. So I was just we were kind of like a baseball, like football household for the most part. But yeah, I was a Cowboys Yankees fan because my dad was in the military, or his dad was in the military. So he traveled a lot, and the only games that were consistently on TV and basically everywhere were the Yankees and the Cowboys. So that's how I became a fan of both those teams. And I absolutely hate it because I'm born, and these two franchises that are like global phenomenons have had some of the most success in the history of their sports both decide to suck completely the second that I am born. The Yankees won one in 09. I was 9. I don't really remember that. They've won 27 championships before I was born. And then you've got, or 26 rather. And then with the Cowboys, they haven't been to an NFC championship game since like before I was born as well. So people always
before
like,
I was born, actually.
yeah, I appreciate you adding a little bit more salt into the wound on that. That really appreciate that, man. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like when those teams win the championship, and the Yankees were there this year. I'm currently on Juan Soto watch, praying that he does not leave, because if he does, I'm gonna stand outside and pick at the Yankee Stadium. But yeah, like it's when those two teams win, it will mean a lot. The Thunder one, of course, will mean the most because that's my favorite team.
Yeah.
But like you got to really go through it to truly experience and enjoy, I think, the way a championship is supposed to be.
I tell people all the time, investing in these teams. Like I say, man, if one day Baltimore actually gets an NBA team, and I honestly don't truly see it happening, but if it does happen, I don't think I could stop being a Mavs fan because I've been invested for so long. Like there's times with the Saints where it's like, I tell people all the time, if I wanted to, I could stop being a Saints fan today and become a Ravens fan, and no one can say anything.
Yeah.
Because I've always cheered for the Ravens. But here's the thing. I've been through a lifetime of pain with the New Orleans Saints. Like I grew up a basketball fan. So it's like I didn't know much about football, but my favorite player was Reggie Bush. He played for the Saints. So I said, okay, I'm a Saints fan. Okay. Luckily for me, when I became a Saints fan, they started winning. Before that, the Saints were the Washington Wizards of the NFL. So I got
It's
lucky.
not a spot you want to be.
It's not a spot you want to be. And then the Minnesota Miracle, and even before that, like you told the story about how everyone turned around and looked at you. I had a girlfriend at the time, and we were going to a comedy show to see Gary Owen that night. And I was like, yeah, I just want to finish watching this football game. It was Minnesota versus New Orleans. And I got my coat on. I got my hat on. I'm standing in front of the TV. She's laying on the bed. The game is about to end. I'm like, yeah, it's over. I just want to see the rest of it. And Stephon Diggs catches the ball and runs up the sideline for a touchdown. And I think I stood there for about 5 minutes just staring at the TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I cut it off and I said, we can go now. And I think like the first hour and a half into the comedy show, I didn't laugh at a single joke.
Hey man, I wouldn't laugh for a long time after that. The fact that you even went out to the comedy show, I would have been like, I know we had this plan, but I need to like curl up in a ball on the couch for a little bit. Kind of similar moment, not as heartbreaking, but the Cowboys that first year of Dak and Zeke when they played the Packers in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And they lost because Aaron Rodgers threw that dot down the sideline. They hit the field goal. I had a bunch of friends over because I was like, oh, this will be fun to have friends over. And then there was this video of me in a Zeke shirt, like just laying down on the couch, like my head in my hands, like I can't believe this just happened. And all my friends laughing at me, being like, he did it to you again. Aaron Rodgers got you again. And it's just devastating. The best thing is when you have a lot of people around that you care about that decide to make one of the worst moments of your sports life even worse. That's real friendship right there. So
I actually deactivated my Facebook. I deactivated my Facebook for the night after the Minnesota Miracle. And when I logged back in the next morning, the amount of support I got from my friends, it was ridiculous. But I'm sure you can relate with the Dame shot. Now it's like every time the playoffs come around, you have to constantly see this play over, over, and over again. It's like, I didn't forget it happened. Like, we understand it happened. Can we just move on from it, please?
Yeah, man. And it's the Dame shot's one of those things too that's in like every NBA commercial ever. And at this point, I don't have any problem with it because it turned us into what we are now. Like if that shot hadn't happened, I don't know if they blow up the team the way that they did, which was necessary. But like I feel bad for my brother who's a Sixers fan because the Kawhi shot, you also know that's in every single type of NBA montage and promotions and stuff. So he has to constantly relive that because his team hasn't made it anywhere. Yeah, it's been tough for him. I remember when that shot hit, like everyone went silent, and he just like stood and like walked out of the living room and like closed the door in his room. And I don't think he came out there for the rest of the night. It was just like he's going, I'm going to bed.
Yeah, older brother or younger brother?
This is an older brother, so
poor guy.
What part of Virginia?
That's terrible.
I'm from like the southern east corner, like Virginia Beach specifically is where I'm from.
My dad lives in Chesapeake.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's like right there. Like 25-minute drive. Yeah, man, it's a nice area. It's, you know, unfortunately, again, close to the Washington Wizards, which could have really sent me down a dark path if I was a Wizards fan. I would be a much angrier person, I think, now than I am I am at this point if I was a Wizards fan. I'm much less optimistic.
Virginia Beach is on the short list of cities to get a team, so I'm just putting it out there. Like,
yeah, I remember I had to actually write an essay in 10th grade, I think it was, or 9th grade, because they were supposed to build an arena to try and attract an NBA NHL team, and something fell through with it and never got built. But I had to make a proposal like, oh, like would it be a good thing? Would it be a bad thing? And yeah, that happened like forever ago at this point. So I think it would be cool to have a team there because, again, it saves potential Wizards fans. And that's very vital, in my opinion, to helping protect people. But we'll see.
It's actually weird because I know this because it shows up on my news feeds and stuff because of where I live. But as far as like where the Wizards play and where the Commanders play and where the Capitals play, they plan on moving all of that to a specific area in Virginia. So they won't even actually be playing in DC anymore, but they'll still be the Washington Wizards. I think that's just the dumbest thing ever. I don't like it. I go to Wizards games when they play the Mavericks and when they play other good teams that's worth going to see. It's a decent area where they play, like as far as the downtown area. I went to the Mavs game Thursday. God bless the Washington Wizards for being trash. I was able to leave at the start of the fourth quarter and beat the traffic home. There were actually Wizards fans sitting behind me and just hearing them talk about the players on their team and just trying to find hope in just the smallest thing. I was like, I've been there before. I understand. I was invested in Tyrell Terry at one point. So,
bro, I was convinced Teo Maladon was the steal of the draft. There is this TikTok edit actually That's hilarious that someone made. And I didn't find out about this until recently. But someone took a clip I made, and this is a very early YouTube video of mine. So I'm nowhere near as charismatic. Like my energy's low, my voice is down. I think I'm wearing like an Xbox headset, I believe, because that was what I was using at that point. And it's me basically saying, like, hey, Poku's got all these tools. If he really reaches his peak, he could potentially be an all NBA talent. And then I like say that, which obviously I wouldn't say he quite reached that point. But I was like, and I think if he puts it all together, he could someday be an all NBA talent. And then it transitions into a Poku highlight montage, and it's got like a few 100,000 views on TikTok, and it's absolutely hilarious. It's like ridiculous. I'll see if I can find it. At some point I can send it over to y'all, because it's one of those things that, you know, if I need to have a legacy someday, I think being the Poku guy who helped create the highlight tape is one of the best things that I could possibly ask for. I was convinced with him and Teo Maladon and Darius Baisley was part of our young core at one point. Man, I had no idea where we really were.
You weren't the only one. I remember Pierre from Numbers on the Board on his
Yeah.
YouTube channel. He made an entire video about Darius Baisley and comparing him to Lamar Odom. Like, he was high on Darius Baisley. So it wasn't just you.
He had moments. I'll credit my dad. My dad always hated Darius Baisley. He's like, he's a black hole on offense. Like, he doesn't really do that much. Just every game, Baisley would make a mistake, and he's like, I'm telling you, Darius Baisley sucks. And I was like, nah, Dad, he's doing kind of this stuff good this season. He knew the whole time. So clearly I was behind the trend, because my dad was in on it. He was like, I'm out on this guy. He's, not good. Like, everyone else is better than him. He's not going to be part of your core in a few years. And I was like, we'll see. I mean, maybe we should get my dad in the front office. He also can't pronounce like half the players in the league's names, so I don't think that is the best route for him. But
get him to write it down. Like, don't say it. Just write it down.
Bibbs, do you have any more questions before we get into the matchup?
We kind of touched on the Lou Dort thing that had been floating around. I assume on how you addressed it, you don't have any like feelings. You feel like people are overblowing it.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those things where Lou is an incredibly physical defender. That's 100% the case. And I think he's also just someone that really doesn't have the best control of his body at times. Like, there are a lot of times where he's driving to the basket and it just looks like a train has fallen off the rails. Absolutely love Lou Dort. But I just think it's one of those things where people do this a lot, I feel like, where they mistake like uncoordination or like just lack of balance, just like going all too out and maybe a little bit too far, like too hard, in exchange for like people being dirty. I'm not someone who really ever assumes, unless there's the most obvious thing ever, like Draymond Green stomping on Domantas Sabonis' chest. And kicking Steven Adams in the nuts like 3 times. Like, unless there is very clear and like pretty obvious repeatable stuff, I never really assume a player is dirty, because I don't want to assume that somebody is trying to intentionally hurt someone. I always want to, give them the benefit of the doubt. And I feel like Lou is just one of those guys where it's like, if he's on your favorite team, you absolutely love him. And I do. I love Lou. If he's against your favorite team, you probably hate him most of the time. And I know a lot of Mavericks fans absolutely hate Lou Dort. I'm not, it was like Pelicans fans and Mavericks fans a lot today. We're kind of talking about the Lou Dort stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I think it is one of those situations where if he was a Maverick, people would feel differently. That's just kind of how I see it, at least.
So I used to do scouting back in the day, and I remember scouting Lou Dort.
Mm-hmm.
He was a former soccer player. And I remember watching him like drive to the basket. He reminded me of one of my teammates in high school, who super athletic, super fast. And like on a fast break, you just knew he was about to do something disastrous, because he's going speed. And he like goes to lay it up, and it's like looking pretty. And then he just smacks it hard off the backboard. Like,
yeah,
he's doing a lot of that in college. He's obviously gotten a little bit better, but like you said, a lot of the times he's like a out of control train drive for the basket. Specific to Mavs Thunder, a lot of Mavs fans did not like the way he defended Luka in the playoffs last year. We know Luka is the type of guy that like is looking for a reason to take something personal. What are your expectations from that matchup going into this cup game?
Yeah, I'm really excited. That was one of my favorite matchups to watch last year, because Lou is an amazing defender and Luka is one of the best offensive players I've ever seen play. So to see kind of that peak, defensive and offensive player matchup, it's awesome. And I think, I can't remember who it was, someone on one of the broadcasts recently said that Luka, when they asked him about like his best defenders in the league, mentioned Lou Dort. And I think that probably comes from last year's battle between them. And that's one of my favorite things. People will be like, like I'm sure a lot of Mavericks fans aren't excited to see Lou Dort guard Luka because I know there was a lot of bumping and all that stuff last year. And I think that also again goes to like the playoff series where it's like, y'all, that was forever ago. But I mean, I can't wait personally. Even if Luka goes out there and torches him, I know Lou is going to give 110%. He's going to, be up in his face. And that's my favorite thing is when we get to see that high level defensive player face off against that elite offensive player. And it's the same thing like, last year, Derrick Jones Jr. was playing really good defense the entire season. And so I was excited. I was like, okay, how is Shea going to attack this matchup? How is he going to try and break that apart? And, Shea ended up having a great series, but a lot of that was just hitting tough buckets. And Derrick Jones Jr., I thought, played great defense in a lot of that series. And a lot of guys in the Mavs did, especially on the supporting pieces, because outside of Shea, it was a pretty down series for majority of the team. And so getting to kind of see those top players go up against those top defenders, that's always something I'm excited for, whether it's a Thunder thing, it's a Mavericks thing. And yeah, I'm interested to see how the Thunder guard the Mavericks, because last time we played y'all, no Luka, Alex Caruso wasn't playing. So I wonder, who does Caruso match up with when he's on the court? If he's on the court, Kyrie and Luka, who does he get in some of those spots? And, I assume Casey Wallace is going to get a lot of minutes on Kyrie Irving as well. And of course, Lou is going to be kind of glued to Luka when the two of them are out there. I wonder how the minutes match out there. I'm extremely excited because last time I know both teams were a little bit more beat up than they are now when we played against each other. And it's the same two teams, but it's two very different teams at the same time.
I agree. You mentioned Alex Caruso. Mm-hmm. The last time we had a matchup nearly as significant as this, not the same amount, was the playoffs. Last time you were on, we talked about X factors on each team. We talked about PJ Washington earlier. Let's move him to the side. We know.
Thank PJ God. I appreciate that. Let's do that. Let's do that. If you want to move him to the bench for next game, I'm cool with that too. You can go ahead and do that. That's cool with me.
Let's not talk about PJ Washington. Mm-hmm. The Dallas Mavericks no longer have Derrick Jones Jr. We've replaced him with players like Klay Thompson, Najee Marshall, Quentin Grimes. The OKC Thunder no longer have Josh Giddey. I'm pretty sure you guys are happy about that. You have replaced him with guys like Alex Caruso. You have Isaiah Hartenstein. Do you think Alex Caruso, being the addition to this team, could be the X factor in this matchup Tuesday?
I think he for sure could. The defense has been insane for him all season, and being able to slow down Kyrie and Luka a little bit between the two is going to be huge. And Caruso's been so awesome. The offense started the season pretty rough, but as of late, he's been hitting a lot more shots. He's been pretty lights out since he came back from a hip injury that he was dealing with. And with him returning kind of to form, it's been a big boost to Thunder's offense. So if he can knock down a few shots and continue to play that high level defense, I think he definitely is an X factor. I might even say Isaiah Hartenstein is kind of the guy I'm looking at the most in this matchup, because as we know, last year, like y'all were just running down the middle of the court, throwing lobs left and right. It was like I was watching prime, Clippers lob city out there at some moments. So I'm really excited to see how Hartenstein deals with that. It would be cool, again, if Chet was playing and there were the two bigs, to see how Mark utilized both of them in that, that scenario, because you guys are so good at throwing those lobs. But I do think if he's able to keep y'all off the offensive glass, because that was also, of course, a big issue in last year's playoff matchup, was we were getting out rebounded to all hell. But if he's able to keep Lively off the glass, prevent some of those lobs, I think his screening as well has been huge for this team. The second unit minutes with just Dub running them, especially when Chet went down, it was a big struggle because there were really no big bodies out there very often. And, Dub's being asked to create everything himself. But now that Hartenstein's back, the two of them play a lot of their minutes together in that second unit. And Hartenstein's screening has been massive for Jalen Williams, and opening up driving lanes and sealing guys off when he gets to the basket, making that midi easier to get to in his spot. And I felt like having a screener like that against y'all last year would have really made his life easier when he had a pretty rough series, because with the Mavericks defenders and just the way that Jason Kidd threw guys at him left and right and changed up the matchups, it felt like he just was constantly out of rhythm and really having to hit these super difficult shots, which he's great at. But in a playoff environment, sometimes those looks can dry up. So Hartenstein screening, getting easier looks for J-Dub in those second unit non-Shea minutes, I think will be huge, keeping you off the glass. To me, he might be like the most important player to win that game coming up in a few days.
Yeah, I think his physicality actually helps too, especially on the offensive glass. He's not as physical as a Chet. I mean, you can look at them side by side and probably tell the reason why in that aspect. But
Mhm.
I think it would have been a much bigger issue if you had both of those guys. You guys back up big is still Jalen Williams.
Yeah, Jay will, but he has not played yet this season. He's dealt with an
Yeah,
injury, so he's been out so far. So it's been a lot of like Kenrich Williams has been playing minutes
yeah,
recently since he's come back from injury. He's been great playing that backup big. Of course, J-Dub ran it when we were full
right.
small ball, micro ball Thunder with no bigs out there. But yeah, a lot of Kenrich Williams minutes coming off the bench. So that's gonna be another moment, is because y'all just go back and forth a lot of times between a Lively or a Gafford, and I know sometimes it goes stretch with a Kleba or something like that, but being able to try and match that physicality when Isaiah Hartenstein comes off the court. Can Kenrich keep up with a Gafford or a Lively and prevent those lobs? Like, how do we play those minutes? How much is Hartenstein going to have to be out there to prevent that from just becoming a massive issue? That's one of the big challenges for the Thunder with Chet Holmgren down, because typically you could play them together, you could play them separately, you could always have a 7-footer that can do a lot of different things on the court out there. Yeah. Now the Thunder are forced to go small. So yeah, that's one of the big things too, is how is Mark going to attack that? And when does he decide to take Hartenstein out and put Kenrich in? And what are the adjustments that are made when that comes along, especially if, Gafford or Lively are starting to cook, they're, getting a lot of touches down low. What's the adjustment there?
Bears gonna kick it to you.
All right. It's kind of a two-part question. First, this would probably be pretty quick to answer. With Chet Holmgren injury, it's a really weird injury to the hip. What are your expectations as far as getting him back at all this year? I know the recovery, I think, or the healing itself is going to be one process, and then it's going to be a ramp up to try to get him back to being able to actually play NBA basketball.
Yeah, everything that I've read, and I have a few people who have talked to some physical therapists and have let me know about it. It sounds like by like kind of mid late January, he'll kind of be ready to start ramping up a little bit. I'm anticipating coming out of the All-Star break is probably when Chet is back. To me, that just makes the most sense. Is where the Thunder aren't playing any games, they're just chilling. They can really focus in and get him back up. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more so like a mid-March if they really want to be careful and take their time, because the Thunder are winning a lot even with Chet hurt, obviously, to be the best version of themselves and to ultimately compete for a championship in this gauntlet of Western Conference. They're going to need Chet back and playing at a high level. And I think take your time, let Chet get healthy, because it is such a weird injury that never really happens to basketball players. But it sounds like to me he'll for sure be back this season. It's just a question of when and how he feels with the ramp up process. I'm anticipating right around the All-Star break, maybe like in early March, mid-March at like the latest.
Okay. Yeah, I saw something I was reading saying like 3 to 6 months, and that's such a wide window. And
It's
like you said,
huge, yeah.
You don't want to push them to get back too fast. You probably do want to get them for at least the last month and a half at full strength, like trying to get used to your rotations and things like that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting to watch. I think for me, the idea of you guys having, like you said, Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein. I always say I look at injuries as an opportunity to like look at your depth and figure out what's going on behind guys. So like Isaiah Hartenstein getting to play these huge minutes right now and be that starting center is going to put you in a better position. If you get Chet back, he gets into foul trouble or something, like Isaiah's been doing the job for so long, it's not like it just throws off everything y'all are doing. So could be a blessing in disguise in some ways.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think getting a lot of reps for Hartenstein to really get integrated with these guys. It's not like he's still sharing the court with Chet at moments, and you're trying to figure out, because you do want to also figure out how the two of them look together and when the best opportunities and best moments to go to the double big thing are. But I do think getting to see him with Shea out there and him with J-Dub, and how does he work in that second unit, because I think that's something big that they've discovered is, hey, Dub and Hart can really run this thing. So maybe then you do Shea and Chet for a lot of the game. And of course, end of the half, end of the fourth quarter, you put everybody out there. And that's another thing too, is it just changes the dynamics of the roster as well, because I was expecting a lot of changing starting lineups this season, where some games you have Chet and Ihart in the lineup. Some games it's like a case of Wallace or Wiggins or Joe, Caruso maybe start some games. And the Thunder have gone to basically all those combinations outside of course, Chet and Ihart, because they haven't been healthy at the same time. But I do think, like you said, if Chet comes back and is looking the way he did to start the season, honestly, it might be a blessing in disguise because the Thunder are still winning games. They're looking awesome. But now you get Chet back, and he hasn't had the grueling 82 game season. Obviously, a hip injury is still a major impact. But I'm just saying, if he is healthy and he's feeling good now, rather than last year, where he forced himself to play all 82, and against y'all specifically, you could see the legs weren't there anymore. Like his three ball turned into a laser. He was missing a lot of them. It could ultimately lead to the Thunder being a lot more dangerous in the playoffs with Chet being somewhat rested.
Yeah. So the last part of that is, and the reason I say it's related, believe I saw somebody posted the other day that you guys are by far worst in free throw discrepancy, not getting the free throws like other teams. I attributed it to, not having your centers,
Yeah.
and having to foul a lot because that's the only way you're really going to stop bigger players. What are your feelings on the idea of the Thunder getting a raw deal with the free throws?
Yeah, I do think it's been a little rough in some of these games. Like there are some games where the discrepancy is ridiculous. I do think being small, and also the Thunder's strategy is to force turnovers. They have the least turnovers in the league. They force the most turnovers. They have a positive steal to turnover ratio right now, which is completely absurd. So that's kind of their whole thing. It's like they're getting in passing lanes, they're being physical with you. And I do think, the games where they had no center definitely hurts. And there are minutes where even when Chet was playing or iHeart was playing, where you don't have a big out there and you're likely to foul in those moments. I do think the Thunder have still been getting shafted a little bit. Honestly, one of the things I think that needs to that has improved recently and is going to continue to tick up is J-Dub. A lot of times we'll take kind of those tough mid-range jumpers, and when he drives to the basket, it feels like he's not getting into the body as much. He's more so avoiding the contact than seeking it. And to be one of the best offensive players in the world, you have to get free throws. I know y'all definitely hear the Luka free throw talks a lot of times. I've heard it a million times with Shea. It's just what you have to do to be an elite scorer. There's no one who's going to be elite scorer without getting a bunch of free throws. Like Steph is maybe the only anomaly in that regard. And he's one of the, 10, 11 best players in the history of the sport. So I think like that number has ticked up more and more with actually Isaiah Hartenstein being back in that second unit, because I think he's opening up so much space that defenders feel more forced to commit heavily to him to stop him, or feel like they have to bump him. And so his free throw rate has gone up. The Thunder's as a whole has gone up as of late. So I'm not as pressed about it anymore. It was just more so at the beginning of the season where there was one moment where I think they had like the worst free throw rate in NBA history to begin the year. And I was like, what is going on? How is this happening? But I feel like as of recently, the whistle's not really been that big of an issue. And I mean, you can still win games even if your whistle's bad. It's very rare ever in NBA games where the whole reason you lost is because you don't have a great whistle. So
don't remind me about free throws in NBA history. Shout out to Dwayne Wade. And yeah, anyway,
shout out to the refs.
Payback.
Yeah.
Payback.
I was taking it back to like the beginning where we started. You mentioned that the Mavs and the Thunder are the best teams in the Western Conference. I would argue that from a Mavs fan standpoint, looking at the cup standings, like, the West bracket and the East bracket, the only team I feel that is on our level is the OKC Thunder. I honestly feel like if we beat you guys on Tuesday, not saying it's going to be easy the rest of the way because this is not a playoff series, it's one and done, anything can happen. But
for sure.
I'm not worried about any other team on either side, like whether it be Houston Rockets, the Golden State Warriors, unfortunately now the Orlando Magic, the Milwaukee Bucks, definitely not the Atlanta Hawks, and not the New York Knicks. Would you say you feel the same way about the Oklahoma City Thunder?
I definitely think those are the two best teams, the Thunder Mavericks in the bracket. Like you said, it makes it harder with the one and done format, which I like. Last year where we saw the Pacers make that crazy run, and I think it's cool. It's a similar reason why I like the play-in tournament, and I think a lot of people have now come around to it, where it is cool in professional basketball to have this one and done format where normally it's just playoff series. So I do agree. I think the Thunder and the Mavericks are the two best teams. With the Warriors, they're starting to come back down to earth. Buddy Hield has started to enter the last section of the Buddy Hield cycle where he comes back down to earth. It's, there's a reason it's a meme and everyone believes it. So he's no longer shooting like 50% from three. Steph dealt with an injury, but he's back. And Draymond dealt with an injury. The Warriors right now are actually down 9 to the Wolves. I know they were talking about having Draymond and Kuminga, like maybe like Draymond comes off the bench to up Kuminga's trade
Yeah.
value. In my opinion, is what it seems like. Yeah,
That's
so
exactly what it is.
they're a good team, but until they have like a real second option, they just don't scare me that much. If your
Mhm.
second option is some nights Kuminga and some nights it's Wiggins and some nights it's Pods, or it was supposed to be, but he's been bad this season. Like I just can't take you seriously when it's like the Mavericks have Luka and Kyrie Irving, or the Thunder have Shea and then Dub and then Chet Holmgren. They just don't have that type of consistency. And with the Rockets, I like a lot of what they're doing, but I do think I'm of the belief, and I actually want to turn this over to y'all. I don't think the Rockets have a guy yet. To win an NBA championship, you need a guy. I don't think Şengün's that guy. And I really like his game. I think he's awesome. But to me, he's more so of like a two guy on your
Yeah.
roster, maybe a three if you like really want to be really good, rather than a one. I just don't think as a big who doesn't really shoot like that. He's improved defensively this year, but he's not like this big time shot blocker and rim protector. I just can't see that being their top guy. If really anybody on this roster for them is going to eventually be the guy, I think it's Amin Thompson. Amin is unbelievable as an athlete. He's ridiculous. I just don't know if the jumper is ever going to come around enough for him to be like the guy on a championship team. But he's one of those players where it's just like, I'm glad that he's not quite there yet, as the Thunder are starting to ramp up and contend, because I think he's already a problem, but man, you give him a few more years and if he somehow ever finds a jumper, it's completely insane. So yeah, with those two teams, that's kind of how I feel about him.
Yeah, I think Amin is a few years away, but I see where you're going with that as far as him having the potential to be the guy. It's funny, like me and Bibbs just kind of had a conversation about the Rockets as well. I had a segment where I asked pretenders or contenders, and I asked him, do you think the Rockets are a true contending team? With the criteria being, hey, not like, can this team win a championship this year, but can this team make the Western Conference Finals? Can this team represent the West in the finals?
Yeah.
Both of us agreed that I don't think they are.
Yeah.
They're having a hot start to the season, but I don't see anything that makes me feel like even if this continues, they're getting out of the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I think if they got like a good matchup, they could maybe stand a chance. But I think it's just too early, and really like their offense is nowhere near consistent enough for me. I mean, like the Fred VanVleet magnet ball. I don't know if y'all watched their game against us where they beat us. Like Fred VanVleet hit that half court shot, and I was like, okay, yeah,
Yes.
I always say in like a big matchup, there's like one shot where you're like, okay, this is over. Against y'all, it was that damn Derrick Jones Jr. turnaround jumper. I can't believe that went in. Still to this day, one of the most like what the hell just happened moments I've ever had. And talk about like the Nuggets Wolves series last year was when Rudy Gobert hit the turnaround jumper. Yeah, right. What like the reaction for the Nuggets bench is one of my favorite things ever. When Rudy Gobert is hitting turnaround middies against you, just call the game there. We don't need to play the rest of the way out. Just go home. You're just embarrassing yourself at that point. So like Fred VanVleet hitting those shots, and like they have those games where they can explode and go crazy, but the offense just isn't consistent enough. The defense gives them this really high floor where they're not going to be terrible a lot of nights. They're at the least going to clamp you up. But it's just like, I mean, Jalen Green has not really worked out for them. I like Reed Shepard a lot, but it feels like he's still a little ways away from being this big time contributor for them. Tari Eason's really fun. Şengün's really fun. Like they've got good pieces. I just think they need that guy. And to me, that's where like they're almost going to be like a Raptors situation where they have like this great group, and it's not like the same thing because they don't deal with DeMar DeRozan for a Kawhi Leonard, but they take this really good supporting group and insert one of the top stars in the league into it, and suddenly it's like, hey, this team is really, really scary. That's kind of more the way I see it with Houston. I think that's their eventual path. I don't know who it's going to be. We'll have to see who becomes available, but yeah. And then you look over at the East, like the Knicks, I think are probably one of the bigger threats because they can have those crazy offensive games. The Bucks, just because Giannis is going berserk. Yeah. But I mean, if you ask me, I think the winner of Thunder versus Mavericks kind of goes on to win the whole thing.
It's insane because I notoriously have bad luck with sports betting. I was just telling Bibbs Tuesday night, I had a 4-leg parlay and $10 on it, and I was 2 Giannis assists away from $10,000. And in a group chat that we have, someone said, Reese, please don't place any bets on the Mavs Thunder game Tuesday. And I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how upset would you be if I told you I placed a bet for the Mavs to win the NBA Cup? And I'm just looking at the odds, and the Mavs odds are like plus 750, which I think is insane because I genuinely feel like the Thunder and the Mavs are the two best teams in this playoff, mini playoff scenario right now. I even tweeted it. I said, in the West, there's the Thunder, there's the Mavs, and I believe then there's everyone else. Like,
Yeah.
a Golden State is a good team. I honestly don't believe in them. I think they're pretenders this year.
I agree.
The Clippers are very good, but they can only go so far without Kawhi, and we've never seen Kawhi healthy in a Clippers jersey for a full playoff run. I like Memphis. I like Memphis a lot, but I don't believe in Memphis, honestly. Not yet anyway. I just still want to give them more time. And we talked about the Houston Rockets. They don't have a guy. Who knows what the team will look like if Jalen Green comes around and, plays like we saw him play towards the end of last season. Even though that was with Şengün out, I really do believe those two can find something together, even if it isn't this season. The Denver Nuggets, they just lost to the Washington Wizards.
They did. In case people hadn't realized, they lost to the Washington Wizards, where Jokic would have nearly a 56-point triple-double, in case people had not yet realized that happened. I mean, I feel like I need to keep saying it to realize it did happen.
And I want people to understand that wasn't a healthy Wizards team that they lost to. Like, and a healthy Wizards team is bad. So you can only imagine. The Los Angeles Lakers, I would argue, I don't want to be rude. I'm trying to find a way to say this. I was going to say,
I mean, you can go ahead. I've given a lot of slack to Wizards fans throughout this. I feel like, although I'm, when you're saying stuff about Lakers fans, you're affecting a much bigger fan base, which I guess now is also an inadvertent another shot at Wizards fans. I have nothing against the Wizards. They've just somehow become the running butt of the joke for this podcast.
It's just the low hanging fruit right now.
It's just the low hanging fruit. Right now. I mean, they're like, what, 3-18? Yeah, I mean, come on.
But the Lakers are the same team we've seen for the last few years. So while the West is deep with talented teams, very good teams, I believe the Mavericks and the Thunder are ahead of the crop. And this matchup Tuesday is going to be must-see TV. And I'm sorry to tell everyone, I'm 100% going to have a parlay in on the game. I'm sorry.
Hey, man, if it makes you feel better, I dropped I'm famous for every time I make a YouTube video about a team, it curses them. And whether I say they're good, they then play bad. If they're playing bad and I say that they suck, they're playing good now. And I made a video recently about how the Thunder statistically have one of the most dominant defenses to start a season in NBA history. And there are so many people who have directly tweeted at me and commented on it. And they're like, you couldn't wait to do this video until after the Thunder played the Mavericks in the NBA Cup game at the very least. And there's a lot.
On the way. 150.
Like, there are people begging me they're like, I need you to please make a Mavericks video before we play them on Tuesday. So I might have to drop one either early Tuesday or Monday or something like that. I mean, y'all beat up on the Washington Wizards tonight, didn't you? The Wizards, how did they keep coming along yet? Or y'all played last night? Y'all didn't play tonight, right?
Toronto last night.
No, we didn't play tonight.
Yeah, Toronto last night. I mean, I might have to make one. By the way, I don't know if y'all have seen the NBA schedule for tomorrow. It's just one random 7:30 game between the Knicks and the Raptors. Why is that the case?
Really?
That glitching. Like, I pulled it up. I was like, one game? What?
Oh, wow. There's really one game.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, that's
all right. That works.
It must have been.
It's an off night tomorrow.
Yeah,
Thursday isn't much better. You have the Celtics and Pistons, the Raptors and Heat, and the Kings and Pelicans. So outside of the cup games for the next few days, it's not looking very good. But whatever you do, don't make a PJ Washington video.
Don't tell.
I think that might be the only thing. If the Thunder get like dominated by PJ Washington again, I might make a full video talking about how I can't believe that this is happening. And I'll have to hopefully bank that curse magic up until the playoffs and hope that affects him down the line, because that might be the only thing that can stop him. I don't know what I don't know why he hates Oklahoma City so much, but something happened clearly.
I was trying to do research. Arkansas is where he's from, and Arkansas is a border state to Oklahoma. So I don't know if he had like a high school opponent near the border, and they went across the border to get some snacks after the game or something, and just something happened in Oklahoma, and he just hates it. So that's the only thing I got.
Where's Brittany Renner from? I'm gonna look it up.
I think she might be from Oklahoma. Hold up, that might be real. That might be real. I feel like I saw a meme recently.
I'll let y'all look that up. I'm not putting that in my search history. Y'all got that. Y'all got that one.
Let's see.
She's from Mississippi.
Is she from Mississippi?
Yes.
Did she go to college?
She played soccer for Jackson State University.
All right, that's not in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I know she was an athlete.
There's got to be some connection between
there has PJ to be a connection. Has to be a connection. He played for Kentucky. What would the game? I don't know. There's got to be something. It's inexplainable, but it's almost like if you make a PJ video with the intentions of cursing PJ Washington, it's not going to work.
That's possible. Although I'm pretty sure I've done it before and it did work. Like it was like not for him specifically, but I was like, I want this team to lose, or like I need this team to win or something like that. And I made a video about them and it worked. But I don't know if that's a one-off type of thing. I mean, like PJ and Shea played together at Kentucky. Like, can you cut him some type of slack? Maybe there was some moment there where like he beat him in 2K by like 100 and ran up the score. Maybe that's it.
I think you figured it out.
That might be it.
He just wants to compete against his old teammate. That's all it is. So as long as y'all have Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, PJ Washington is going to kill the Oklahoma City.
Love Shea. Fire up the trade machine, Presty.
I'm not even going to ask you a prediction. We're not going to do that. We both know, who we're both picking.
Yeah. Sure.
To move on from that, before we close this out, there was something I wanted to bring to this podcast, but I wanted to get your opinion on it. I usually don't indulge in MVP talks in like December and November because there's still so much time left. But I've seen a lot of talk about what the criteria for an MVP is and how it's inconsistent every year in the NBA and how there's no real criteria for the MVP. I have my opinion on it. My opinion is I don't believe there should ever be a set criteria for the MVP award because I feel like there's so many things that go into it every single year that if there was a set criteria, the MVP would be wrong more times than not.
I completely agree. Yeah.
A lot of people still say Derrick Rose stole LeBron James's MVP. I completely disagree when you consider the fact that the dude was playing with Keith Bogans in his starting lineup and Ronnie Brewer for most of the time. You have years like Russell Westbrook winning the MVP, all the records he broke, and people say, oh, well, he won it being this seed. But look what he did. You have to have context. Look what he did with the team he had, the records he broke, how long those records stood for, and what that team would look like if he wasn't on it.
Yeah, I'm also the belief that it should be different season to season. If we had set criteria, it would mess it up because the NBA, I feel like more than most leagues, is very narrative and storyline based. Like it is a league where there are all these very small intertwining like narratives and storylines and through lines. It's very interconnected, whether it's all the player movement or the fact that it's a very like, it feels like it's one of those leagues where there's just so much going on at any time. If you just stuck to one thing, I mean, you would have to pick a 1 or 2 seed guy every single season, which I believe most of the time is probably the way to go. But like, I'm of the belief that anybody who says the Russell Westbrook MVP was, not like somewhat legitimate. I understand if you wanted to pick Harden to win it, I get that. But there are people who say that Russ was like a completely terrible MVP. Like people didn't watch, like single-handedly watching that season. One of the most insane things I've ever seen. It wasn't just the triple doubles. It was the fact that it was an average. He was setting those records. Had one of the most crazy clutch seasons ever as well, which for some reason never comes up. And I mean, like the names on that roster, Samaj Krishan, like he was playing. That was his only season in the NBA, and he was like our backup point guard. He is forever immortalized in NBA history, by the way. Shout out to him because he hit the three to give Russ the MVP record, which is, that's a cool moment he can show his kids. But like, it was like him, and then it's like we had Joffrey Laverne as like one like crucial rotational piece. People just don't realize how like disastrous that roster was.
I pulled up the roster and this is insane.
It like if you just post like a picture of what the roster is, people aren't gonna. If you just showed most NBA fans today the faces on that roster, I guarantee you nobody's guessing half the people that were on that team. We had Norris Cole in the year 2020 or 2017 playing like minutes for the team at some moments. And so
I watched that season and I'm still flabbergasted at these names.
Like Kyle Singler was out there, for example. We tried to turn Domantas Sabonis into a stretch big because that was one of our best options to create space for this team. It was such a disastrous roster that like you had to try and bring something together after Kevin Durant left. And, I just, that's one of my things because people don't realize like how special that season was. And it wasn't just the numbers that he put up. It's also the storyline. Kevin Durant leaves and Russ elevates a team that has no business being in the playoffs to the 6th seed. Like that's what part of the storyline with the MVP. And that's why I never feel like we'll have consistent criteria for it. I know last year for y'all, you're saying Luka should win this MVP because the Mavericks were dealing with injuries earlier in the year and he's putting up these historic numbers. And sure, he wasn't on one of the top 3 seeds, but he still put up those insane numbers. And I think Luka had an argument. I think Shea had an argument as the best player in the youngest 1 seed ever. Jokic, I think, ended up being my personal pick where he was right there. I like went back and forth between the 3 of them every single night, it felt like. Yeah. But I think Jokic had an obvious argument because his numbers were ridiculous and the Nuggets were one of the top seeds. There are so many different guys and arguments that you can go with. You can't ever have true criteria. And that, to me, this is going to be one of the most interesting MVP races ever because what Jokic is doing right now is impossible with Denver. Maybe they're pushed their way up towards the top of the standings because after tonight, what are the numbers? Because he put up, by the way, I don't know if y'all saw 48, 14, 8, and 3 tonight. On back-to-back nights, 48 and then 56. Let me see if I can find the updated numbers. Do you want
his specific numbers or the team standings?
I found his specific numbers. Right now, he's putting up 32.3, 13.6, and 10.2 while shooting 56% from the field and 50% from 3. It's impossible numbers. But then the question is, like that's the thing. The seeding, like how much do you weigh those two? And I feel like for everybody, it's very different. For me, it's hard. This is going to be one of the ultimate tests because if the Nuggets end up as like an 8 or a 7 seed, but he's putting up these numbers, what do the voters do? Especially because of voting fatigue, which feels like Jokic has somewhat escaped with some of these numbers so far. But like, what if Luka kind of, starts to turn up back to his usual self, which I'm anticipating. I don't think Luka is going to struggle for a full season. There's no way. Like if Luka and Shea are playing out of their minds and they're the top 2 seeds in the Western Conference, but Jokic is putting up like objectively the best numbers, a historic season, but he's on like an 8 or a 7 seed. What do you do? Because that roster is not nearly as bad as Russ's. I know there's problems with it, but it's not as bad as the roster that Russ had in 2016-17. And then in the East, like Giannis is playing out of his mind. The problem is like the Bucks could be like the 3 seed and they're like 4 games over 500 at the end of the season. I don't really know, man. I have no idea where this race is going to go. Obviously, it's early, but like, I really don't know what you do with this race at the end of it.
I know some people don't like to admit it, but I think you have to put Jason Tatum in the conversation.
I agree as well. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on it, Bibbs?
Yeah, I was trying to look it up so I could see the whole sheet because I remember it being a thing. 1962 MVP. With Bill Russell winning it the year Wilt was averaging 50. 50 and 25 is just absurd to even think about and not winning the MVP.
I don't even think if you simulated if you created a player in 2K and gave him 99 everything and simulated a season, I don't think they'd average those numbers.
Not even close. No.
I'm trying to pull up because I feel like the people always talk about that particular piece of it, but it wasn't just it wasn't just Will. I'm pulling it up now if I can get to it. 1991, 1962. I want to pull it up because what's his name? I'm struggling with the Big O, Oscar Robertson. I think he did something insane that year too. I want to say he averaged a triple double, but I might be like close.
I think you're right. I'm pretty sure that was the averaging triple double season.
Let me see, 1962. That was his second year in the league, by the way, which is crazy.
That's
Unbelievable.
insane.
41 triple
That's
that
yeah.
year. Let's see. These are the totals. I need it per game. There we go. All right, he averaged. It's so weird looking at these because they didn't have blocks and steals back then. There's like an empty column. All right, 30 points per game, 30.8, I should say. Yep, 12 and a half rebounds and 11.4 assists per game. Uh, and again, same year, Will average 50 and 25. Neither one of those guys is the MVP. Bill Russell is, and he never averaged 20 points a game in his career. It's like you said, it's always been a narrative thing. You could go with the best player on the best team, the guy you think is the key to that team winning. You can go with the year Russell Westbrook won. Nobody expected that team to do anything that year. He got them to the playoffs and he had insane numbers doing it. He got the award. You got to have a good narrative that's based on your team's expectations plus your performance. And that's why I say it's probably harder for Tatum or Shea to win because they're both expected to be at the top. So you got to be at the top of the league like you're expected to be on top of your stats being absurd. Both of them are doing what they're supposed to do, but only one person can win. And then again, you have a guy like Jokic doing what he's doing. He gets his team to the 4-5 seed. Our guy's going to want to give it to him. Giannis turning back. Giannis taking another insane run right now. If he sustains it, are they going to want to reward him for doing that? Like it's just a lot going on. Luka, for the first time, getting his team a first round home court would be a big narrative storyline. So I personally, I don't have a favorite right now. It's way too early.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think this is one of those ones that we could look back where it's, Shea's putting up insane numbers and Jokic is. And again, I think Luka is going to be right up there towards the top. He's all NBA first team every single year. That's just a given pretty much with him. So I think Luka will be up there and Tatum's going to have an interesting case. And Giannis is shooting mid-range jumpers at a high clip right now, which feels ridiculous to even come out of my mouth. Yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know what you do with this race. And again, it's very early. It always takes time for like the true top like 2-3 to come out of the pack once you get like halfway through the season or 50 or 60 games. But if it just continues this way, like, if like the Thunder win, like, because I'm thinking about it like this, like say we win like 60 some games and the Nuggets are like kind of down there in the standings, Jokic is gonna have the better numbers. He's gonna have the best numbers in the league. It's not even gonna be a conversation. It's like how much does Shea's numbers need to match that? How much does the win difference have to be for him? And like, I mean, he's just putting up numbers that are so impossible. It's one of those things where it's like, voter fatigue is a big thing in the NBA, but he just somehow keeps putting up like historic numbers and then more historic numbers and then more historic numbers. And yeah, Calvin Booth doesn't know how to put a competent team around one of the best players we've ever seen. So yeah, happens.
one thing I don't like about the NFL is that the MVP award is essentially a quarterback award.
I agree.
But one thing I respect about it is they do not care about voters fatigue. Yeah. If you are the MVP, if you are the best football player on the planet that season, they don't care if it's 4 seasons in a row. They're going to give you the MVP. And I think the NBA should adopt that. Obviously, like we said, no specific criteria. But if everything lines up and Jokic is MVP this year, he deserves to get MVP. It shouldn't be, we gave it to him last year. He had it 2 times before that. That should not matter. Give it to the person that deserves it within the context of the season that has just taken place. It seems like we're all mostly on the same page with that.
Yeah, I agree. I understand why they don't want to keep giving awards to players, but like if a guy's the MVP, he's the MVP,
Yeah. Yeah. This is a great conversation. I feel like it's inevitable that we'll possibly meet in the playoffs. So we'll probably be doing this again for a third time. Yeah. Bibbs, you want to get any closing thoughts off before we close this out?
No, I'm excited about this game coming up. I hope it lives up to the hype. I don't doubt the performances of our superstars, which I think is why we can both pretty strongly say that we are the biggest beast in the West, and everybody else is playing catch up.
Yeah, I mean, I know for sure Kyrie and Luca are going to have big games. I know Shea's going to come out shooting. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. I think this will be the best game out of those first four. Although Houston Golden State will be probably fun. Do y'all know how many games, by the way, in a row that the Warriors have beaten the Rockets?
No.
It's 15. The Rockets haven't beaten the Warriors since Russell Westbrook and James Harden were in town before the bubble.
Jeez.
So so I'm like, the Warriors are kind of shaky right now, and the Rockets feel like the better team at the moment, but they just can't beat them. They just can't do it. So I don't know. That one might therefore be like kind of insane. But yeah, I mean, I think this is gonna be the best game. It's gonna be a good time. Like you said, I don't think we need to make predictions. I think we know where we're both going. But I mean, either way, like the Thunder win, I'm super stoked about that. They lose, they get a little bit of time to chill, rest up. It's not the end of the world. And I mean, I like this, even though Thunder Mavericks fans kind of hate each other. I like this Mavericks team a lot. Yeah. I was a fan of the Luka Kyrie thing when it happened. I was hoping they would make it work out, and they have. And they've done a good job of building this team up. Luka's always been one of my favorite players. I get so many comments on my YouTube videos, like half the time when I make them, especially when I make Mavericks videos, and they're like, "Oh, Luka's making a video about himself because apparently I look like Luka Doncic," which I don't really see it exactly. I don't see it all that. Either. I think it's the hair. I think the hair kind of. Yeah. I think it's the hair that kind of matches up. But
you 100% have a better barber than Luka Doncic. I will tell you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, as much as I do like the Mavericks, Luka's had some rough haircuts in his time. I can't lie. One of the craziest things was that that Gordon Hayward haircut that happened recently. I think it was his year with the Hornets. Like it, just what I think of bad NBA haircuts, like that's the one that comes to mind for me. So, and like
I will say in regards to good cup games, I would not sleep on the Knicks and Hawks with Trae Young being in New York.
And that's true. Trae likes to make things interesting anytime he's playing the Knicks, man.
We could be in full classic.
Josh Hart's playing 48 minutes, 100%. He's not leaving that game. There's no chance. So.
Well, it's been fun. I appreciate you for coming on. I'm looking forward to Tuesday. I know the timeline will be crazy. I'm pretty sure most of the people know, but for those who don't, let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, it's 3_cone over on Twitter. The main thing I do is YouTube. It's ThreeCone, no spaces, underscores, or anything like that. All spelled out THREECONE. And yeah, it's Thunder videos every now and again, but a majority just general NBA content. Just kind of chronicling the season, keeping up with it, whether it's, how's this team performing. I do like some recaps of like the full games. I've been doing some stuff over on TikTok recently with Snapback Sports. So it's 3_cone, I think, or might just be 3Cone. I'll check that real quick. Over on TikTok as well. It's, how do I not know my own TikTok? It's just 3Cone, no underscores there. Half the time the name is taken, and so I have to put an underscore. Half the time it's not. The guy who has the 3Cone no underscore name has not tweeted in like 6 years, and I'm mad about it.
Is there a timeline on that?
I thought there was, but apparently not. He retweeted something in 2020, so maybe it re-upped it. Just tweeted a couple of anime tweets in like 2016, and then retweeted something about a new Dragon Ball Z game in 2020, and like maybe saved the account through that. But apparently I'm just
a 5-year thing or something.
Yeah, same thing happened with us when we created the name for the podcast. We said, is there anybody else like using the name? And there was a Twitter page called, I think they were the Mavs Outsiders or Mavs Outsider, like a newsletter or something. And they hadn't tweeted since like 2016, 17. We said, it's ours now. Forget it.
That's what you got to do.
But signing off for Reese, Bibbs, and Cone, we appreciate y'all for tuning in. Good luck to both sides on Tuesday, specifically the Mavs sides for me, for sure. But
PJ Washington, if you're listening to this, please, bro, chill out just a little bit. You could have a good game. Just stop being an all-NBA player when you play us. I would appreciate it. Thanks, man. Means a lot.
I will be looking for the timeline for a PJ Washington performance. I know it's going to be crazy.
I'm gonna bet on it 100%. If I'm gonna see if I'm going to witness that happening, I might as well make money while it's going on. So
maybe if I bet on it, then it won't happen. I may need to think this through.
I'll slide you some money to make that bet. I got you. Hit me up. We can make something work, man.
We'll talk about that.
Okay, cool.
We will holler at y'all next week. Peace.
Peace.
Peace, y'all.